So every year we like to give you an updated version of this video right here. And this year's title is How Much Has the Cost of Living Gone Up right here in San Diego? So we're gonna get into all that. Obviously living in San Diego is gonna be expensive. There's a ton of expenses that you gotta think about, from housing, which is gonna be the #1 expense, to insurance, to how much does it cost to send your kids to preschools and to private schools and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna dive in and let you know, maybe even uncover a few costs you didn't really think about. In San Diego, compared to the US, we're about 44% higher than the average within the US as far as cost of living goes. And one of your biggest expenses, if you are moving out here and you're purchasing a home, is gonna be your housing expense, whether it be a single family home or a condo. And while the average general cost of living is only 44% higher than the US, housing costs is about 123% higher than the average within the United States. And so just running the averages, this is through all of San Diego County. So prices, obviously, as you're going coastal, as you're going inland, different size of houses, gonna be totally different. But the average cost for a single family home right now is about $1.3 million. Where as you go into that townhouse / condo, and a lot of our condos that you consider a condo, it's gonna be that townhome style, where you share a wall or two. You do have some top and bottom, but it's sitting about $780,000. So huge difference between condo and single family home, but the prices definitely have gone up since last year.
One of the biggest things that has affected housing prices over the last year has been interest rates. Right now, as we're sitting in actually the very beginning of May 2024, we're sitting around 7.5% for interest rates for a conventional loan. For a detached house, you're looking about 1/4% higher if you're looking at a condo or townhome. So we just ran these numbers just kind of as a general, and you're looking around a little over $10,000 for a detached house and around $6,600 for a condo or townhome. This is your mortgage, insurance, taxes, everything kind of combined, based on just that average cost in San Diego. One of the costs a lot of people ask us about are property taxes here in California and San Diego. You're looking at about 1% of purchase price when you're buying a home. That obviously differs city to city and also community to community. We have a lot of kind of new build master plan communities that have also a Melrose, which goes on your property tax bill. It shows up as CFD if you're physically looking at a property tax bill. And that can be anywhere from some communities like Aviara and Carlsbad. It's really low. It's been going on a long time. They've had a couple drop off. Or a community like we're in now, San Alejo Hills, where it is a pretty major expense when you're looking at your property tax bill. Mine's around $3,500 a year.
And one way to potentially save money on your property tax bill if you're 55 plus and you're moving within California to San Diego, if you're moving, let's say, Northern California down to here, there is an incentive to where you can take your current tax base. Let's say you bought your house a long time ago. The property taxes are super low compared to what they would be down here. You could transfer that base down to your current or your new home down here in San Diego. There's a few other things, a few other little rules you got to follow. But for the most part, you can basically transfer your tax. So if you're moving within state, it's a good option to save a good amount on the property tax bill. Obviously, the prices are going to be quite expensive, but when you sell your house up there, if it's comparable down here and you can transfer that property tax bill, it might be worth looking at. So if you guys are thinking about moving to San Diego, you got some questions, be sure to reach out. Our number's popping up somewhere in here right now. Call, text, or email. We are a real estate crew right here in San Diego. We'll hop on a Zoom call, get you dialed in, and just start that initial conversation and figure out which sections, which areas are gonna work for you and everything else. So we're the guys who answer the calls, texts, and emails, so feel free to reach out. We got your back when making the move here to San Diego.
Next up, another thing to think about on top of your mortgage and your property taxes is insurance. And this is actually maybe the only thing that comes in a little bit lower than the national average. It is a really important one though, because it has become more of an issue, more of something you need to focus on. Homeowners insurance is a little bit harder to get now. We've had a bunch of companies leave California and not issue new policies. One other thing to keep in mind too is if you're in an area that has high fire, that makes insurance a little bit harder to get, a little bit more expensive. For cost of insurance, homeowners insurance, you're looking at about $1,700 a year. Obviously that depends on house, but that's about the average here in San Diego, where the national average is more or closer to $2,500. So we are lower than the national average, which is not common for San Diego, but it's definitely something to focus on early. If you're buying a home out here, it's one of the first steps once you're in escrow, once you have an accepted offer, is getting your insurance dialed in, because it has become more expensive, but also just harder to get.
And Cassidy mentioned high fire zones, like where we're standing right now, certain areas of San Diego Hills. Like if you have any of those rolling hills or canyons or, you know, brush like right in your backyard, or even certain neighborhoods where you're like in a little bit and you're like, I didn't think that would be in a high fire zone, and they are. It's something to be aware of, because yes, those are going to be higher insurance premiums. Now hopping into auto insurance is probably going to be similar to where you are. My car is about $1,200 a year, depending on, it's a 2013 Prius, so a little bit older. Obviously, if you get newer or expensive cars, that number is going to go up from there. There's other auto costs as well. Since we are a commuter town, you're going to be driving your car everywhere, so get used to it, get cozy with it. But you're going to have, like, you know, just standard stuff. Tires, gas out here is pretty expensive. Right now we're sitting in closer to $6 a gallon. You're gonna have more frequent oil changes, but as far as like car maintenance, it's pretty simple. Just get your oil changes. You don't have to worry about, they're not icing or they're not de-icing the roads with salt or anything, so you're not getting any of that. As you get closer to the coast, you might have to worry about a little bit of corrosion as you get closer to the salt water over there, and a little bit of saltier air. So, and that's over time. That's gonna be a while. You don't have to worry about hail. So like certain areas, I was watching an Instagram video where their just house or their car was getting pelted with hail. And so it was like, you know, by the time it was over, I don't know if the car was completely ruined, but we don't have to worry about that. You might get a little rain here and there. You might get, you know, obviously if you're parked outside, your paint might peel a little bit because it's sitting in the sun forever, but auto insurance is basically gonna be relatively the same.
Health insurance obviously is going to depend on if your employer is covering it, if you're paying for it on your own, if you're self-employed, all of those things. So hard to give you really an average of that. But one big thing here is our healthcare system is great here in San Diego. We have Scripps, we have Kaiser, we have Ray's Children's Hospital, which is one of the most sought after hospitals here for children. You have UCSD, which also has a huge medical facility as well. So there are a lot of really good hospitals here in San Diego.
And just for a family of four, you're looking at about $1,500 to $2,000 a month for health insurance. Now hopping back into the household, we're gonna hop into utilities a little bit. One big thing out here in San Diego, you'll see a lot of places, is gonna be solar. And one important thing, actually, if you're thinking about buying a house out here, is the solar leased or is it owned? Now, if it's owned, it gets transferred over. If it's leased, a few more questions have to get asked. How much does it cost per month? How long is the lease? Usually they're about 20 years. Can you potentially buy that solar lease out and then just own it? But as far as solar costs, if you're thinking about buying a house that doesn't have it, you're looking at about $12,000 to $16,000 or so. But over the past few years, California has taken some of the incentives back. They've actually, if you have your solar, you can actually take, let's say you're not using a certain portion of it, you have additional or extra solar, you can usually sell that back to the utilities, SDG&E in this case. But it used to be a little bit more lucrative where you're actually getting a decent amount. Now they're making it a lot less. I think I just read it was about 75% less that you're getting for that extra solar. So just making it a little less, the payback time that it takes to pay off that solar is taking a little bit longer. But a lot of times if you are buying a house with solar on it, depending on if you have pool systems or if you have, depending on obviously what's in the house, a lot of times it will cover most of that house's electrical needs.
And while California is pulling some of these incentives for solar and making it a little less worth it, they're also going more electric. So we've seen gas prices go up significantly over the last year, 2 years, just to kind of de-incentivize that as well. A lot of cities are starting to mandate that new construction only have electric appliances. That goes for water heater, that goes for furnace, all of that stuff would be electric. A lot of our furnaces here are gas. That also pushes the air most likely from your air conditioning as well. And just kind of general principles, we do not use heaters very often here. If you get kind of out in the outskirts into the mountains, it does get a little colder, but here kind of in the coastal areas, you're not gonna use your heater very much. And for air conditioning, on the coast, there's a lot of houses that don't have air conditioning.
There's a lot of windows on the coast.
Yes, there's a lot of windows.
Get the coastal breeze.
And yeah, you get that nice breeze. But here, we're in Alejo, as you get a little deeper into San Marcos, Escondido, it starts to get warmer. So we probably use our air conditioning for maybe a month or two out of the year, depending on how hot of a summer it is.
Now hopping into the water cost here in San Diego, we're probably on the higher scale of that. Obviously, we're importing most of our water from elsewhere, so that does have an effect on the cost. And there's about 20 plus different water districts here in San Diego. I think the most expensive is Fallbrook, and then it goes down from there. but a lot of the systems are tiered. So if you use this amount, you're paying that amount. As you go to the next tier, it gets more expensive, etc. So a lot of the agricultural places like Fallbrook, that's part of the reason it does get more expensive. Just back in December, the city of San Diego had a 5% increase in the price. And by 2025, that's gonna increase another 15%. So it's gonna average, or it's gonna end up about 20% above where it is right now. And you'll see that throughout San Diego as they're updating infrastructure, as they're adding new projects, as they're importing more water. It just depends on where you are. Now, if you're living in like a single family house and you're taking showers, you're just doing the dishes, you're doing that kind of stuff, or you don't have a ton of landscaping, it's really not gonna be too bad, 100, 150 bucks. Once you get into bigger properties with a lot of landscaping, or just a pool can take a lot of water, then that's where the water prices can get a little bit more. Obviously, the more land, you're gonna have the more water. A lot of people, even if you do have a bigger parcel, we do see a lot of, put some turf in, a lot of drought tolerant landscaping where it's, like dryscape and stuff. So you're not having plants and stuff that take a ton of water. But for the most part, a lot of people are reaching out, are looking at those standard single family houses. So it's gonna be pretty standard. It's not gonna be too high of a cost.
And then you do have sewer, trash, TV, all the things that are kind of choices in the end. One big thing too here, internet, we've started to see more high-speed internet being installed in some areas. Encinitas just got Ting. Solana Beach, Rancho Santa Fe, Carlsbad's starting some projects too. So if you are looking for high-speed internet and that's a main focus for you, these are some of the areas you can check out. So just like across the whole country, we have seen food costs go up kind of across the board. We're definitely starting to see that here. We're gonna continue to see that here. Fast food chains specifically, not so much like the mom and pop spots, just had minimum wage go up. So we'll start to see that over the coming month.
Right, in California, it's $20.
So that obviously that cost will be handed off to us as consumers. So it's just something to think about. Chris, I think we joked about last year, the burrito tax, it's still real. The burrito tax is definitely still going up. I was just chatting with my friend that owns a taco shop in Encinitas, and he just was talking about how much their costs have gone up. And obviously they still have to make a living, and so the cost of our delicious burritos are going up.
And most of the time, my family, we eat in, dine in, but we went to the Encinitas Street Fair last weekend and decided to grab some lunch. It's a little pizza spot, Blue Ribbon Pizza, good little spot, downtown Encinitas. So go grab some, go check it out. But it was me, my wife, my two boys. We got pizza for the boys, pizza for us, a little salad, maybe an app, a couple beers, and the boys got a drink. Ended up being, with tip and everything, about 150 bucks for a lunch. So I don't know, obviously prices have gone up. We've seen that elsewhere. Anytime you're going out, you're gonna see that. You're gonna find little spots where you're like, oh, that's not too bad. Like, where were you saying?
Casero Taqueria. We just have come to really like the spot, and it tends to not be outrageously expensive. Obviously that's gonna be kind of just spot to spot. It is just a spot that my wife and I go to, so we don't bring the kids, so obviously that is less expensive. But I'd say that $150 mark for a family of four is kind of right where you're gonna see it if everybody gets a meal and everybody gets a drink. So that's just something to think about too.
And in the food category, San Diego actually has a ton of local farms. I think we have the most local farms in all of the US as far as San Diego County goes. We got a ton here. There's little micro farms, there's bigger farms. So with farms comes farmers markets. Every city here has most every city here has a farmers market throughout the week at some point. Cardiff has one on Saturday, Sunday in Encinitas, during the week in Carlsbad. When's the San Marcos one?
Tuesday or Wednesday, something
anyway,
like that.
Yeah, so there's farmers markets at all times and a lot of local food. So you will find some fruits, vegetables, all that kind of stuff, relatively affordable there, fresh, somewhat, they have some other spots too, but for the most part, all local.
As for grocery options, we, just like probably where you are now, we've got a whole bunch of kind of that tiers of grocery stores. You've got Aldi, you've got Ralph's, Vaughn's, then you got some of the like Whole Food places. You got Jimbo's, you got Whole Foods, you have Gelson's, which is kind of a high-end market. Grocery store here in Carlsbad and Del Mar. Last year, we estimated that we spent about $250 a week for a family of four on groceries. We probably are closer to that $300 a week mark now, just because of the cost of food going up. And San Diego as a whole is above the national average for cost of groceries by about 12%.
One benefit of living in San Diego is we have good school districts throughout most parts of San Diego. So with that, public school system is free for the most part, right?
Yeah, except for PTO costs and things like that, but donations, things like that.
Always some sort of
There's always
donations.
something.
But all that's free. There's also charter schools in San Diego that are free as well. They specifically focus on certain subjects. So they are part of the school districts wherever they are located, but you do have to go apply. There's different things you do have to do to get in there. It's not just going to your local charter school. You have to go, not out of your way, but you have to go and actually apply to get in there.
There are a ton of private school options here if you aren't looking at public school. The average here is about $16,500 for a year's worth of school. And there are, like I said, a bunch of options kind of up and down San Diego County.
Now, even though the schools are free, there's some things you got to think about before the kids go to school. So infant care is sitting about $1,200 per month. Obviously, that's going to vary. Do you have in-house nanny? Where are you bringing them? That kind of thing. Once you get into preschool, you're looking about $1,000 per month. Now, once again, that can vary widely. I think the school my guy goes to, it's like $1,800 plus a month. He's only got a few more. We only have like 2 more months, so it's awesome. Then there is after school care. So, schools get out somewhere around between 2 to 3, somewhere in there, depending on what school district and what school you're in. But usually a lot of times when we're working and stuff, send them to after school care. The monthly average for all of San Diego is about $700, a little over $700. So all those can add up quite a bit. And so while once they do get into actual school is free, there are other things you got to consider.
So next up is taxes, favorite subject of a lot of people. We already talked about property tax, which is quite a big number, but here in California, income tax can range anywhere from 1% to 12.3%. So that's something to keep in mind. We've also got sales tax, which is anywhere from 7 3/4 up to 8 and change.
Yeah, it's 7 3/4 for most parts of San Diego. Certain cities have a little bit more. Chula Vista, I think any city with the name Vista in it, it's 8.75 plus a few other ones to help with like extra infrastructure and that kind of stuff. And I've seen that there are other places that are potentially going to put that on the ballot in the coming months or the coming years. So, but yeah, that base is about 7 3/4.
We also talked about the cost of gas since this is such a commuter city. There are a lot of taxes on gas, and that's what a big portion of the reason that our gas prices are so much higher here, sitting around that $6 a gallon mark. And that's something that's never going to go away, so it's just something to keep in mind. And then you also have the sunshine tax, and that's why a lot of people move out here, and that's why we are never leaving San Diego, even though taxes are high, cost of housing is high. We love living in this city.
And now there's some other things you got to think about. One being just some home maintenance stuff, because there's things that you got to think about, like we don't really shut down. We're year round. So if you have a pool, even though you're not using it during the winter times, you're taking care of it. Landscapers throughout the year, we don't get snowed in, so they're coming year round as well. And then just everything else around your house. Sometimes people opt to have a monthly termite service where they come out, check it, make sure there's no active infestations or anything like that, or pest service where they're coming out to check that out once a month. Now for termite real quick, when you are looking at home, one thing we do recommend getting is a termite inspection. And it's gonna have something on it. You're most likely gonna find something in the report, active termites or potential damage or dry rot or whatever. There's gonna be something like that. It's not alarming. We do see it in a lot of properties.
One other monthly expense that you might run into is an HOA. This obviously is gonna really depend on if you are in like a master plan community like we're in now, where it's just common area maintenance, landscape, things like that, or are you in a townhome where it's covering things like roof and termite and water, a whole ton of other things. So those costs obviously can differ. Kind of the HOAs where it's just a master plan community can be anywhere from like 80 to 120 bucks, where if you're in a townhome, it's closer to like 350 and up.
One other thing you have to think about summer times with the kids, keep them active and figure out what to do. One thing we like to send our kids to like camps. There's no like sleepaway camps. There
are a couple.
There might be a few, but for the most part, you're not sending them away. Like my wife grew up on the East Coast, and they would go away for like 8 weeks to a camp out in the forest. So it's not really too much of a thing out here. You will probably find it, but there's like week camps where you're dropping them off for, like 9 to 3, 9 to 4, whatever it might be. Soccer camps, football camps, what else do we got?
Baseball camps,
all kinds of sports camps,
yeah.
But there's other stuff besides sports too.
My kids also do a farm camp that's definitely more on the expensive side, but it's really cool and interactive as well.
And you could think about probably starting about $400 a week, going up. It depends on what farms, it depends on what camps they're going to. But obviously, if you're doing, 4 or 5 of those throughout the summertime, that can add up as well.
A big thing here too, since we do have so much sunshine, we also have a lot of sports, like Chris just mentioned, a couple of camps and stuff, but there also are year-round sports, there's seasonal sports. So you do have the cost of registration for some of those recreational sports. There's also all the gear that goes into that, which is a big cost in some situations. And also there are a lot of club sports here too. There's club baseball, lacrosse, soccer, and those tend to add up as well. Shocked at the price of uniforms when we got into club soccer. It was almost as expensive as just registering for club soccer. And definitely budget some time in there. We are either at games or at practices pretty much 5 days a week, sometimes 6, depending on different seasons. My kids play baseball and soccer, and those tend to overlap a lot. So it is a lot of time, especially if you're coaching, which I love to do, but it is very time consuming and just something to keep in mind if you have active kids that are into sports.
But there is some good news. Not everything here in San Diego costs money. There's a ton of parks. There's a ton of beaches. Obviously, if you're moving out here for the beach, that's pretty much free. You might have to pay parking or a little bit here and there, but for the most part, you can be outside, a ton of hiking, just a lot of outdoor events, a lot of ways to get outside. You're gonna find community events, you're gonna find street parades, you're gonna find, like I said, farmers markets. You are gonna find concerts in the park at various cities. So like Carlsbad, throughout the summer times, they have concerts in the park, which are free. Bring your own food and drinks and just have a good time. They got a live band on the stage, super fun. So you're gonna find all these little events as you're living here, as you're diving in. You're gonna find your own little vibe, your own little tribe, and really get acclimated to living right here in San Diego, even though it does cost quite a bit. So if you guys are thinking about moving out here, you got some questions, feel free to reach out. We are a real estate crew right here in San Diego. We're the guys who answer the calls, texts, and emails. So numbers popping up, feel free to reach out. And check out our other videos too. We have all kinds of other videos if you're looking specific neighborhoods, you want to learn a little bit more about Encinitas, Carlsbad, Oceanside, Vista, just pretty much everywhere within San Diego. Check those out, get dialed in, and then reach out to us. We got your back when making the move here to San Diego.